It is the technology show where we translate geek into regular speak. I'm Brett Levy, and I'm your host this week. So a bit of a different format this week, where normally I get myself immersed into a toy that I want to play with. I had to kind of take care of this toy over here after doing a bit of an injury. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of where we are today. And then I have a super exciting show. I actually have a guest, which we haven't done for a while. Sorry, Alex, you don't count as a guest. You're a co-host. And I'm actually going to bring him in. He's the founder of the product that we're going to be talking about today, or co-founder, sorry. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. So just to lay the overview for you. For all of you that know me, I'm not always the most physical person, but somehow for my sins, I got involved in trail running. So instead of just going out and running through Surfers Paradise or something nice and flat, Brett and his mates decided to run uphill on downhill mountain bike trails in the forest at night with a torch on our head. Why? Because we can. Probably about 6 months ago, I missed a footing, came down on my right shoulder, and as you can imagine, it wasn't fun. I did get up, I did carry on running, and thanks for the concern, my beer arm drinking is still working. But waking up in constant pain every day is not a fun thing, and as we get older, it doesn't recover that easy either. So not wanting to take medications and anti-inflammatories and all that is junk that people try and stick down their throats, I looked at a bit of a natural solution, and acupuncture seemed to come along with physio. Now, I'm not knocking acupuncture. It did do what it was supposed to do, and it released a bit of the tension in the shoulder, but it just didn't get me any further. I would leave there, and within half an hour, I would start feeling a bit sore again. Still not wanting to reach for painkillers or anything like that. I did a little bit more research, and I came across red light or red laser therapy. Now, straight away, the word laser and technology makes me happy, being a little bit of a geek. So I delved a bit deeper into it and found out there was a couple of ways of doing this. So what we could do is we could go to a big fancy place and lie in a bed and have a laser aimed at us. I could also lie at home and have Elon Musk aim a laser at me as well. But I also came across a product where I could do it all myself, and I could do it from home. And that brings us to the technology show today. So I'm actually going to bring my guest, and in fact, let's bring the slides up as well, because I've still got some slides, even though we're going to do a guest. So for Things with a Z in the show today, I'm going to bring Forrest Smith, who's the CEO and co-founder of a company called Kineon Labs in. In fact, let's do that right now. Forrest, good morning. I think I've got you on mute. Let's bring you into the studio.
All right. How you doing today, Red?
Well, good afternoon, I think, right? You're in Mexico at the moment.
That's right, in lovely Mexico, up in the mountains in central Mexico in Querétaro, which is a great place for training for a couple of reasons. 7,500 meters, 7,500 feet meters would be a whole different thing, but 7,500 feet up and really nice for cardiopulmonary training up here. But it's also just dry and warm all year round, which is a really nice place to stay.
And you've got cerveza and tequila. So,
yes.
When you look at off-season, you're good to go. So, Forrest, I don't know if you heard the preamble and the pre-introduction there, but you do know a bit of my story. We've had a couple of chats and did a shoulder injury. I don't even know the medical terms, bursitis or tears, or it's not a medical show, it's a technical show. But what I'm also going to do while we're chatting is I'm actually going to drop us back down into a smaller screen, do that and bring up a picture, because some people listen to the show and some people watch the show. So for those that are listening, I've put up a picture of what is called the Move+Pro. I'm actually, Forrest, I'm going to let you explain that, because obviously for those listening, they can't see what we're seeing at the moment. So maybe just take us through what the product is, and then we can backdate into how we got to it.
Absolutely. So it's what we're looking at on screen here is the Move+Pro with three individual modules that are battery driven and that are wearable, and they clip into a strap that can go around any part of your body. We actually started these designs around knees and shoulders and ankles and wrists, which are a little bit easier than it is getting it around, for example, a lower back. I tweak my lower back with my lifting a few times a year, and we've updated now with an extension strap that you can kind of put around your waist. So what we're seeing on your screen right now, though, is these three laser and LED combination modules that are specifically designed to deliver the correct and optimal dosing for internal tissue to reduce inflammation and inflammation related pain.
All right, so I'm going to stop there for a second because we do like to translate things into regular speak. So basically, we're using light to penetrate into the skin and muscle and reduce inflammation. That's how I understand it, right? Am I?
That's exactly right.
Okay. So for the whole pre-story that I did before the show and my personal injury is that I have an injury that's just too deep to massage or just to use physio. In fact, because there's a tear, and again, I didn't even bother reading the report. It just told me I've torn something and I've done something. I know I've done something. But the idea is that we need to get deeper in where needles and massage and that can't go. And that's what red light does. Now, in my research before coming across the Move+Pro, they were talking about different depths of light and different ways that the light or the LEDs work. Please take us through some of that as well, because, like everything in life, not everything's created equal. We've obviously got to find that optimal level.
That's exactly right. So, and we've spent a lot of time in this. Now, I'll walk you through a little bit on the red and infrared lasers versus LEDs, and also as starting point, our general outlook on dosing. When you're dosing light into your tissue, it's very much like dosing pharmaceuticals. You have target signaling molecules. In this case, they're photoacceptors. And there's a number of different photoacceptors, and I think this is something that, although the idea of shining light on something and making physiological adaptations isn't really intuitive, there are some intuitive pieces to this. Of, when I go sit out in the sun, there are photoacceptors for the light that actually give me a tan or give me sunburn. There's something happening physiologically within us as we react to these different wavelengths. And essentially what we've done with the dosing side of things relative to what's available commercially in the market right now is most products are dosed with, and I love the geek speak to normal speak. This is because there's going to be a lot of translating work today. So there's essentially a number of wavelengths that we've identified that interact with photoacceptors in the body. And so photoacceptors, there's a couple of them that are intuitive for us, like melanin in the skin. And there's a few of them that are less known, but are somewhat intuitive, like hemoglobin in the body interacts with infrared light. And we actually trigger a number of different reactions from hemoglobin. And one of those is and why it might be a little bit more intuitive from an understanding, from a personal understanding for it, is if you ever go to the hospital and get a pulse ox on the end of your finger, this technology has been out for decades now, and that's exactly what it's doing. Is infrared light interacts in a known way with hemoglobin, with other molecules in the body that have heme cores and copper cores as well. So when we do this, the typical way of doing this from a product design standpoint, and for most of the specs that you would see from companies in the market for this, is let's talk about how much light. So irradiance or power density, optical power density, are two metrics that we hear a lot for laser therapy and light therapy for how we're dosing tissue. We felt like these were engineering terms, but in this case, we actually need to turn the engineering terms around and start from the physiology. We know what photoacceptors exist. We know in what scale they exist, at what depth of tissue, and we know how light distributes through tissue. So what we've spent a lot of time doing is building out mathematical dosing models on how the light's distributing in through this tissue, and then how we're interacting at the correct and optimal levels of photon delivery with the correct reservoirs of photoacceptors. And so those photoacceptors are not just limited to hemoglobin. We're also interacting with things like cytochrome C oxidase, which is an enzyme in the oxidative phosphorylation chain of your mitochondria. Your mitochondria are the power cells of the powerhouses of your cells, and they have multiple ways of creating energy for your body. But one of these is called oxidative. Actually, the most used and the most successful and efficient way of creating power for your body is called oxidative phosphorylation. But there's some bottlenecks in that chain, and one of the bottlenecks is around this. The fourth phase of that energy production, which we impact with a cytochrome C oxidase. And so one thing that the cytochrome C oxidase and hemoglobin both share is they both have a heme core, and we're acting on it in a very similar way. We're reducing the affinity of nitric oxide for this binding site on these different molecules. And what that does in each of those molecules, and the hemoglobin is one thing. It releases nitric oxide into the blood flow extracellularly and dilates the cardiovascular endothelial tissue and allows for more blood flow back into a wound or an injury or tissue where you see blood flow is impaired. At the cellular level, by reducing that bottleneck in the mitochondria, you can actually do a number of things. But the first thing that happens is you increase, one of the most measurable things that happens is that you increase your rate of ATP or energy production from the mitochondria. You also signal downstream a number of things because most molecules in your body are not just used for one purpose. So even though nitric oxide might be a dilation factor for delivering blood flow more effectively to the area, it's also a signaling factor within the cell for oxidative stress signaling. And so that helps to balance oxidative stress in the cell. And it has a number of downstream impacts. But these are two of about 10 photoacceptors that and two of the more common, but two of about 10 photoacceptors that we interact with the infrared lasers and red LEDs. And I mentioned that I would talk about the infrared versus the red. Infrared is a longer wavelength and it penetrates further into the body. And so the red, you're really, both of them, as it's hard to say specifically how far it penetrates because you don't know what your cutoff for that is. It just reduces down the further you go in. But for a rough order of magnitude, we're looking at infrared penetrating through to about 40 to 50 millimeters and having, say, 1 to 2% of the original power delivery that it had at the penetrating point at that level of depth. And for red, it's much less. So it's more like 10, maximum 20 millimeters into the body. And so we've specifically used these two wavelengths and then these two emitter styles of LED versus laser to be able to target two different levels of tissue. LEDs are better built, and red light, deep red light, is better built for treating surface level tissue, introducing more blood flow to that area, increasing collagen II production, wound healing. Really, if you have cuts or wounds in the area, wrinkle reduction, because the collagen II actually helps maintain kind of more youthful skin. And it works in concert.
Don't talk about wrinkle reduction. My wife is going to steal my Move+Pro, and I'm going to walk home and find her with it over her head.
It's great. Mine's stolen on a daily basis. My kids, I got two boys, 4 and 7, and they're like normal boys. They're getting scratched and falling down and tearing up their bodies in a number of different ways. But for them, it's the wound healing is the most exciting because they come home and they're like, I fell down, and they don't cry about, scraping their knees again because they just they want that Wolverine feeling of like, I'm going to heal in like a day. And it's amazing the impacts for the wound healing. So
it's funny you say that because the other thing with a techie is carpal tunnel syndrome. So
yes.
I've actually taken one of the modules, and I'm just going to go back into the picture again. So for the people that are watching the show, all 3 of those modules actually press out of the strap. So you can use them individually and you can move them and balance them. The idea is obviously to get it straight on the point that you're trying to repair. But to sit there with my wrist flat on the desk and just put a unit on top, I have definitely experienced the benefits of that. And I think you were talking about, that's the infrared, right? That's the shorter
the red penetrates a little bit less. The infrared goes a little bit further in.
It's the red, sorry. So, but obviously my wrist, there's not much between my wrist joint and and you do feel it. And that's the other thing as well. Is so I actually wear the strap that way around because it's like a rotator cuff injury. And straight after, I do 3 treatments of 5 minutes. So we can talk about how it's also set up as well. But you get the relief straight away. So I understand what your boys are saying when they come back and they have that Wolverine effect. It's not a miracle. I don't put it on and I go out and climb the mountain the next day, but I am seeing those benefits, which is obviously what you've explained between the different combinations. The one question that I'd ask myself actually is, being a laser, and I don't want to go laser like this. I'm doing the exclamation marks. I feel like Austin Powers, laser. But being a laser, is this a dangerous product? I'm talking specifically for eyes. Like I joked about my wife putting it on her face for collagen production. What happens if you actually look at these modules? Is it that kind of laser that's going to hurt our eyes, or?
It's not. There are 4 classes of lasers. This is class 1, which is the most harmless version. And with that said, even class 2 devices, there are some class 2 devices, laser devices that are made for eye healing.
Yeah.
There are some macular degeneration. Dry macular degeneration is addressed by, actually, these guys have built a very solid company, Thor Laser, and they do clinical devices, and they make a very good product. It's one of the few products in the market where we see their dosing fits our model as well, where we run other people's dosing through our model to see what the baselines for it are and what it looks like relative to what would be optimal dosing. And those guys do quite a good job, but they make a macular degeneration product that actually keeps people from going blind, which is an awesome thing to see.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but these are class 1. We found in our testing we were planning on bringing a class 2 product to market, but we did testing and with a single laser per module, putting out the same power as we're putting out now with 10 lasers per module, and the difference that we got out of the 10 lasers was substantially. I want to say 20 to 30% difference in our beta tests with
Lot.
the
Yeah.
yes. So we actually, it was more expensive for us to do that, but we've gone with 10 lasers per module versus the 1, and this is one of the things that also informed our outlook on dosing, which is normally if you went through kind of an irradiance or power density type of metric, the 1 laser and the 10 lasers, it's the same. Really, there's not going to be much difference at all from a dosing standpoint. But we found that when you're using our model, which starts from the physiology and works backwards and says how many photons are we delivering to these different types of photoacceptors, there was a massive difference. And that it matched much more with our physiological measurements from our beta testers. And that's really driven kind of our long-term design decisions around that.
Okay, awesome. Now, the other cool thing is I've got it here, and I'm holding up my charging module, and it comes in a very cool case. I'm looking for the case because I've actually just traveled, and as I said to you, I do use it every day. But even the way you've designed the case, it can go in the case, you can still charge through USB-C throughout. The strap is actually next to my bed because I find that if I use it at night, and this was a question I wanted to ask as well, given that although it is a technical product, we're still talking about the body, right? So I found that if I use it at night, I've gone through the stresses of the day. I've put my arm through all kinds of paces. If I had comments running at the moment, I'm waiting for the shame, Brett, get over yourself. But I find that it works better for me. So I have the device next to my bed, and then I just charge here. I bring the modules back and I charge. Is there a better time of day that our bodies are more susceptible to this type of treatment? Should I be doing it in the morning as opposed to the night? Does it depend on the injury?
There are some small variances relative to the time of day. I would say much more important than time of day is consistency. And so whenever you have it, that you can kind of stack it with a habit. And we have these discussions with some of our professional athletes that we work with, where it's the habit, the kind of pragmatic habit versus the aspirational habit is much more effective. So as an example, we were working with one of our NFL players that we work with on the device and kind of his physio for treatment. And the question for him is, what do you do on a daily basis? And meditation was one of the things he mentioned. But when you ask the question, how many times have you meditated in the last week? It's 1 or 2 times. And so that's more of one of those aspirational kind of habits where, the useful case of habit stacking is not necessarily around stacking all positive habits. You could have a habit of watching Netflix every night. As long as you have that habit, stack this on top of it and take something positive out of it. If you look at your historical behavior.
So confession, my time with my Move+Pro is watching Netflix. So I actually prop myself up and I put the strap over because the modules are designed for 5 minutes delivery at a time. And again, just for the people that have never used it, that's what the show's about. We're talking about it. But if you push one of the power buttons, the other 2 modules turn on as well. They're in a series. So I put the strap over, I push, and then it goes for 5 minutes. But that basically gives me 15 to 18 minutes worth of Netflix time, which is awesome. So I can choose a series. In fact, I've been watching Hulu. I've been watching What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, nice.
And that's about 24 minutes per show. So it's perfect timing. And as you said, it becomes a routine for me. Now, just from an advocacy point of view, from my side, I'm not a sports person. I don't go out there and run marathons and things like that. I'm just a normal guy, but I sit a lot. So, I have that tendency that my core gets a lot weaker because I'm sitting all day long. But I have noticed that the mobility in my shoulder has come back probably about 30 to 40%. So things like, it's weird, but like just in the shower, like being able to wash your hair or reach behind your back. I wasn't able to do that in the early stages of the injury. So the fact that I can now do that, and that's also why I've chosen time of day, is that I'm releasing some of the, I'm going to say inflammation, because that's what it is. There's inflammation around the bursitis and whatever it is that's in there. And then if I shower, I can feel the motion in my arm, and the range that I have has actually increased. So clearly something's working in there. Now, and that was why I asked the question, should I be doing that early on in the day and then getting more relief through the day? But am I going to just be then not feeling the benefits again at night? I think you've answered the question for me, though, is that it's more about the habit than it is the time of the day. Because I also didn't want to change things. Like, I'm like, it's working.
Yes.
I want to keep going with it. And the consistency is there as well. I have to say that I have tried to use it every single day. There were 2 days I didn't use the device. I can't remember what the reason was, and I actually felt it. So when I went away last weekend, that's what made me mention the travel case. So people like, even if you're traveling, you don't have an excuse. You can charge up the modules before you go, put them in their travel case, and off you go.
I think I've got a travel case here that I can show you just for the record. So this is the travel case, a kind of an unzip, and we specifically. So to your point, and I really love that you called this out from a design standpoint. Our assumption with the device was that the reason that people weren't using these devices, lasers, at home to instead of taking pharmaceuticals, was because they're $15,000 devices. But one of the things we wanted to do from a design side is reduce the friction points. So the comparable devices that we've seen in the market for these from a clinical level treatment are desktop. They plug into a wall. They're $15,000 or $20,000 that you have to go to a clinic for and to use. And you're just not going to do that regularly. That's not a replacement for pharmaceuticals. Where we felt like if we could make something where you can get on a plane with it. We specifically got the FCC clearance for being able to get these batteries onto airplanes with you, so they don't take it from you at the airport. We've designed it to be modular and wearable and battery driven and easy to use, essentially with the assumption that if we can reduce the cost and the friction points, that people would like to replace the pharmaceuticals that they take, because there's a lot of negative impacts from non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs and opiates, and I don't think those are widely educated about. We've really kind of dug into it as part of building this company and building this product, but the 30 to 50% increase in severe cardiovascular disease risk across the board, whether you're 6 or 60, that's not something that I knew. And that's huge. That's really, stiffening your endothelium is your cardiovascular endothelium is really not a thing. But I don't think right now, if you go to the doctor and see a recommendation for the gold standard solution, which is NSAIDs, that they tell you about these risks. There's liver risks. There's gut endothelium.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan. So when I was just doing acupuncture, and just by the way, I mean, I never really talk price on the show, but in Australian dollars, this is under $1,000. Now, the reason I'm talking price is that I looked at a laser clinic before finding, as I said at the beginning of the show, and they wanted $35 a session, and I think a session was 25 minutes, if I remember correctly. So to your point, I'm not going to go every day. And I've now experienced the fact that if I don't do this every day, it's not going to work. Equally, even with acupuncture, I found that if I went regularly every second day, I was seeing benefits. But if I went every third or fourth day, I wasn't. So this is the thing that people need to realize, is that it's the same as gym. If you go to gym once a week, you are not going to see results. You can tell yourself, yeah, I go to gym. It's not, you need to train 3-4 times a week if you want to see results. diet is no different, sleep is no different. So this is no different either, but it was sub $1,000. That is not expensive. It's, it's what, 20 sessions would cost you the same money if you had to go to a laser. That's less than a month. I'll be doing this for 2 months. You mentioned that we're battery driven. I don't have to charge every day. So it's not something like, oh, well, I forgot to charge, so I can't use the device. There's a little, in fact, I've brought that back up on the screen. There's 4 little white lights. So you actually have a visual battery indicator as well. What I do is I wait till it gets down to 1. After that session, I put it back on the charge, and I think it's 2 hours, 3 hours, and they're done. So you actually don't have an excuse not to use it. But what I was actually getting to is which I found quite surprising, but the acupuncturist himself said to me, why don't you take anti-inflammatories along with my treatment? And I was like, dude, you're supposed to be about the natural path.
Yes.
That's why I'm here. He did use electronics, like he put electrical charges onto the pins. That was great. But when the moment that he said to me, why don't you take anti-inflammatories? I was like, you're not making your own science, right?
That's right.
So that kind of just pushed me off acupuncture straight away. And that was what made me look at it. So, I was super stoked when I came across this. I'm definitely seeing the benefits. And I think it's just the simple understanding of the science. And I'm really not trying to dumb down what you do. You use some really big words earlier on. Probably going to have to go back and watch the show again to try and unpack them again. But my understanding is that anything to do with inflammation is because blood flow is just not moving. So if you can help the blood flow move, you can reduce the inflammation. And if you can reduce inflammation, you can help the healing. And that's what I'm doing. It's just, as I said to you, I actually shared I did an ultrasound or whatever, and there was a tear, and there's a this and that. And you responded back to me and said to me, this is definitely something that the Move+Pro can help you with. And it is a time thing. And as I said, it's only been 6 weeks. I'm pretty sure age is going to come into it as well. I'm 50. So my body ability to heal is obviously going to be less than maybe a 20-year-old or 30-year-old. You talked about your kids where they can watch the healing, right? I remember those days. I could jump off something, sprain an ankle, but 2 days later I was back doing what I'm doing. Don't have that ability anymore, So yeah.
Middle age jumps on us pretty quickly. So I'm 43 and I'm still playing rugby a bit and training CrossFit. And my wife gives me a hard time because she's like, you could have not picked the 2 things that are going to make you get injured the most. But you definitely see that kind of drop off. And I would say kind of mid-30s, it started kind of ticking down. And one of the things that we kind of think of the devices helping with is extending out that horizon of functional movement. So just giving people an option to where when you're taking those anti-inflammatories, if you've got chronic inflammation, you're not really treating the foundational cause of that. So, and when you have that inflammation in a joint, your cartilage is your soft tissue, like the cartilage, is going to degrade faster, and it's going to build back slower. And there's kind of always a balance of those 2 things of, in your knees at any given time. When you're healthy, it's about stable. Your growth rate, your regrowth rate, and your kind of removal rate, or how much tissue you're losing at any point in time. But as you have soft tissue injuries, as you have chronic inflammation, as you have repetitive stress, if you're a long distance runner or an Olympic lifter, these things trigger additional degradation of the tissue there. And to be able to increase the rate of proliferation for a number of things involved in that kind of rebuilding process. So you kind of tackle the problem from both sides. On the one side, you're reducing the inflammation, so you're stopping that degradation. And on the other side, you're increasing the proliferation of collagen 2. You're increasing the proliferation of chondroblasts, which are the fast-growing cells kind of at the edge of your cartilage, and you can actually kind of pull that back into balance to where your cartilage is regrowing itself versus degrading over time. And it's been amazing to see those to kind of so that we're not promising the moon and the stars. Those are on month scale kind of timelines. It's not something you're seeing day to day. Cartilage and
I can
ligaments.
advocate for that, Forrest. As I said, So I've got lots of gizmos and gadgets. As you can imagine, I'm a tech reviewer, and I'm looking at my desk, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff here, and they're my toys. But I actually went into this quite serious. Like I did the research. This, when I reached out to your team as well, and yourself, the fact that you sent a response back, and we're here on the show, and you said to me, it's going to take time, and once I've had that mental mindset, and I said, well, if I put in the hard work, which is 24 minutes of watching Hulu, that's my hard work. I'm going to see the results, and I am seeing the results. I've got increased in mobility. I do have reduction in pain, which for me, I can live with injuries. I can't live with pain. That's when people want to start going to pharmaceuticals. It's a quick fix, take a pain, mask the scent, because that's all you're doing. You're masking, you're not repairing. And I know that. And, I'll have a headache, and my wife will say to me, take a pill. And I'm like, I don't want to take a pill. It's just, I don't. I want my body to sort it out itself. But this is you're using technology to solve a physiological thing. Now, on that note, can you use it for a headache? Like, would you put red light into your head? Or, we talked about the eyes and it's safe. I think I've actually got a slide here that I put up as well, showing different parts of the point. And that's why I asked the question, right? So for those that aren't watching, I've actually got a picture where it's being wrapped around a joint, like a wrist or foot in this case, which I've used on my wrist, and it works very quickly. But the other picture goes showing like little red dots on the different part, knees, hips, elbows, like the places where you expect, and shoulders in my case. But you've got a red dot on this image, and I got this off your website, right, on the head. And I thought that would be a great way of actually, like, maybe finishing off our chat as well, is can this, like, stress, that's probably, we all live under stress, right? This whole world is just a big ball of stress. And stress is obviously what makes your shoulders and your neck seize up. So, maybe it exacerbates some of our injuries as well. But what about the head? Like putting just one of the modules over here on your head.
Absolutely. So we to set expectations correctly for it, because we always try to kind of under promise and over deliver. There are about 7 or 8 different triggers for headaches. The particularly the infrared light is great for about 5 of those. The biggest one being stress headaches. And so with the stress headaches, you're looking at things where tight muscles in the neck, tight muscles in the scalp, myofascial tightness in different areas of the cranium really kind of you don't have the headaches from your brain. You can't really sense the tissue in your brain. It's coming from these outside pieces, and it doesn't really feel like that when you kind of have your head in a vice, but it's
interesting.
That's what it's starting with. Yeah. And it does help with this. But one of the things that's exciting about the technology, and this actually is a good segue into a bit more of the science on what we're doing with our next products, is it can help on the outside with these surface level and slightly deeper tissues for reducing those stress headaches and kind of managing them more effectively, reducing pain scale, and for an order of magnitude in reduction, we're talking about from our studies and the medical literature, roughly a 7 on the visual assessment score, which is essentially just how much pain do you feel out of 10, down to about a 2 to 3 on average.
Wow.
So
and then would you put that on your neck? Because you're
yes.
saying you're not actually treating the brain. So if people have a headache, they go, that would be my reaction. Would
Yes.
you actually be putting the strap around your neck and just leaving it onto the shoulders, so that one module in the middle and maybe one on each shoulder to reduce that stress?
Yes, lower neck behind the skull is one of the points, and we actually have a slide that I can send you for the specific kind of illustration of where to put it. But you can move it forward across your head, and it does penetrate into your brain. But there's also some positive benefits from a biochemical standpoint for what's triggered in the brain because of this. And so things like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which helps with neuroplasticity. There are increased efficacy from a mitochondrial and metabolic standpoint in the brain. But that kind of gets us back to the product that we're working on for launch next year, and that we're actually executing a funding raise round around now.
Cool.
Is a brain product for not just, so what we have right now is a therapeutic neuromuscular pain and inflammation device. One of the things that we assumed with this product was that if we can show people a reduction in pain, they know what that feels like, and they'll this can help us kind of educate while we're getting the product out there and getting it to market. With the brain, a lot of the neurological pathologies or the behavioral pathologies from the brain are something that you'd like to have a baseline for, and then be able to measure and sense and diagnose with a new tool for that. And so that's what we're focusing on for our next product, is a brain device that uses near infrared spectroscopy, which is if you think about a simpler and more mobile and more wearable version of an MRI, that's what it is. It's sending near infrared wavelengths into the brain, and then measuring how those are coming back out after they've interacted with hemoglobin, with cytochrome C oxidase. And with this, we can measure directly and then map into a 3D map how blood is operating in your brain, and then how your mitochondria are operating. And the reason we're doing this is the pathology that you see from the brain, so anxiety, major depressive disorder, bipolar, and different types of dementia like Alzheimer's, Lewy body syndrome, Parkinson's, and there's a number of others, all appear from the what we've been able to measure to date, and kind of and I say we as kind of the medical and scientific community have been able to measure to date, have a foundation in metabolic disorder. And so those are in different parts of the brain, but when we can measure those hemodynamics and metabolic dynamics directly, then we can map in 3D which regions of the brain have these type of disorders, how they're mapped back to these pathologies, and then we can show a before, immediate, short-term, middle-term, long-term impact that we have with our transcranial devices. And so that's our assumption, is that people were going to want to see this. People are going to need to see this to maintain the programs and to get the best use out of them, but also just to be able to drive adoption. People really need to be able to see that we have it right now with the neuromuscular pain and inflammation device. Probably 20 times a week, people are like, "This is snake oil." Like, why? Like, I can shine a light on my body, and how does that work? And we go through and we talk about the science, and we talk about the measurements that we see with reduced inflammatory cytokines, with reduced muscle inflammatory markers like creatine kinase and C-reactive proteins. All of this is in the science that we can show for this, but what we'd really love to be able to do is there's nothing so nice as being able to personalize the treatment and show someone the before and after pictures of themselves. And I think that's the goal for our brain product. And again, that's kind of the anchor point of why we're raising more funding this year. We started delivering products September, October of last year. We've shipped 12,000 worldwide. It's scaling up. We're seeing a really good response from the market for the product, and it's very word of mouth. It's one of those things where once you've used it, you can kind of validate it and talk to your friends about it. Versus,
Hence we're on the show, right?
Yes, yes.
If you've watched any of my shows, and I know you've probably gone back and watched all of them, all 7 years. But bottom line is, I actually don't review tech that I don't use myself and actually physically touch and play with, or B, that I'm not a fan of. I've never actually done a bad review, and there's two reasons for it. I don't believe that my personal opinion should be put onto another company. I might have just had a bad experience. And two, I want to share cool tech. I don't want to share tech that people don't want to use, So I've actually experienced it. You mentioned the snake oil part of things. It's quite simple, right? Do you eat food? Because without light, your food's not going to grow. You're going to be dead. So light is definitely an important thing. And ask the people that live in Scandinavia, that live in the dark for 6 months. Ask them how important light is for them. So,
That's exactly right. And odd one there, because since you're a tech guy, you're going to love this. The chemical makeup of chlorophyll is really not far at all from hemoglobin. So we're looking at two different things that are impacted by light in different ways, but really not very different from a chemical makeup. So it's an interesting thing to see how different biological systems use the light, and then how over time as kind of a scientific and medical community, we're able to dig into this and start testing different wavelengths and then optimize those wavelengths. And this technology is going to get nothing but better over the next 10 years. But again, we're excited to be part of it because we feel like the diagnostic piece is going to be just as big as the therapeutic piece. Imagine, it's great to be able to treat with these modules that you can put on your head and see increased blood flow and see a number of things repair from a metabolic disorder standpoint in your brain. But imagine that this is, even if you just have only the diagnostic without these, you can still see the differences from your sleep changes, from your dietary changes. Really, we're going to kind of give a solid feedback loop for anything that people are doing to change their, depression, anxiety, ADHD. Again, a lot of these neurological pathologies that exist that are a pharmacological solution only right now, and even those you don't have broad enough data to be able to really back on a larger scale. We will have thousands of these devices out measuring people day to day and see the changes that we're able to trigger. It's just an exciting time to.
Yeah. I'm just worried that we're getting to the end of the show. What I wanted to quickly speak about is you've mentioned funding a couple of times, and I did see something on your website. So the website for those listening is Kineon, Kineon. So Ki and the word neon.io. You can also just probably Google Move+Pro, or it's always shared up on my post as well. Just take us through the funding at the moment. So at the moment, we can go online and buy the product from the website, so that will be shipped to you and it's global. But now the funding, is this now for this phase 2 that you're talking about? So this is going to be towards the next product, or is it a equity funding? What kind of funding are you currently going through?
It is an equity funding. We're raising additional equity funding. We're selling 15% of the company.
Okay.
And we've gone through an SEC process called Reg CF, which is a new process, and it's really exciting actually because we can get our community involved and let them really kind of be owners of the company with us. They've been so supportive to date. We really take a lot of time out of our weeks and try to commit it to interactions with the community. But the point of doing this Reg CF was to be able to launch a campaign on Start Engine, which is an equity crowdfunding platform, to be able to allow anyone who wants to come join the movement with us to support us and be a co-owner in the company. We had offers from different VCs and private equity, and their approach for how they would take the company strategically is different than we feel is correct for us. Our mission as a company is to increase the quality of life for the largest number of people we can in the most measurable and substantial way we can. And that doesn't really have, that has kind of an ancillary tie into the commercial piece. And when we talked to venture capital and private equity, they were looking more at yes, just the commercial piece. Can you put your cool brand on some other not so good products and then sell more? And it's kind of like that would drive more commercial success. But our commitment is to our community and it's to our mission, which is to really offer people a pharmacological alternative for pain, inflammation, and then long-term anything that's disrupting their quality of life is something we'd like to be able to help with. And so long story short, this allows us to take ownership in and to fund our next projects with next products with community and co-owner support. So we're on Start Engine. I can give you the link for posting it up there, and we're raising $3 million at a $20 million valuation.
So it's startengine.com.
That's correct.
So let's go. I'll do that quickly and see how that works. Sometimes it works. There we go. Startengine.com in real time. So yeah, look, as I said, for me, I'm definitely seeing the benefits. We wouldn't be talking today if I wasn't. I do plan to continue. The goal for me is that if I can get to the point where I have a slight discomfort as opposed to something that's limiting me. I used to play a lot of paddle ball. I can't play anymore because I can't do the overhead shot. It just hurts. And I used to always laugh, not laugh. used to always joke with my partner when I played. It was like, I jumped in the air, I took my arm back to hit the shot, and I just knew it was going to hurt, but I still did it anyway. It's like
Yep.
your wife saying to you, you've chosen the 2 sports that are going to actually give you an injury. I would go every Thursday night to go and hurt my right shoulder because the shot's just there. You got to take it. And she's like, why don't you just do the drop? I'm like, it's not how the game goes. You know,
I didn't get to smash it, and I would have impacted my chance of winning with my friend here. And there's nothing better than that competition kind of.
And the good news is I got the smash. I did suffer for the next 2 days, come home, ice packed, etc. But I got the smash. So that's my goals. I actually want to get back onto paddle court and be able to hit the shots and not know that it's going to hurt, you know.
Yes.
So yeah.
100%. I love it.
A direct link as well. So I'm going to just quickly, just for the people that are actually watching as well, I just want to quickly do this while we finish off because there's a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? The extension. So if I go there, so startengine.com/offering/Kineon, Kineon. Forrest, it's been awesome. First of all, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All the natural things that I've tried, and I've had this injury since pretty much February this year. So you can imagine, you know, you get to a point where living with pain kind of seems normal, but it shouldn't be.
Yes.
So thank you. I am treating it day by day, and I'll continue to do so, and I will continue. And I'm going to mention again on the show, we might be talking about neurological things as well. I mean,
I'd love to be back and talk to you about it. Yes, it's super exciting, and I can't tell you how happy it makes me to hear that you're having a great impact from it. It's you know, it's why we come to work every day, and I'm so grateful to have the time to talk to you and just to be doing the work we are, and hopefully to get you back into your smash within the coming months.
Yeah, no, thank you. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the show. Basically, I've still got the engine running, or the banners running. It's Kineon is the name of the company. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Kineon. We're using light to repair our bodies, which is tech. So it's got to be awesome. So I suppose that pretty much is it for this week. So keep your screens clean and your knobs shining.